We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Monday. It's the start of a new week. It's going to be a busy motherfucking week, but it's also a holiday. Today is Martin Luther King Day. And whenever we get to this day, I always think a lot about my past because I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And I've said before many times that back in the 60s and 70s, racism was pretty much accepted. I mean, people were just racist and there was no shame about it. They just did whatever they did. They said whatever they said. And some people might have been hurt by it, but that didn't matter. They had a right, a constitutional right to say whatever the fuck they wanted. Thankfully, those times have gone by the wayside for most people, not all people, not Republicans, but some people. And as I look at Martin Luther King's birthday today, I got to say, I really admired Martin Luther King for a number of reasons, but there's one specific. And as I say, it reminds me of the 60s and 70s because I remember being a young boy, 8, 9, 10 years old or so, going to grade school. Um, I lived in South Minneapolis, and as much as it was an urban situation, a lot of rednecks in fucking South Minneapolis to this day. That's why I rarely go back there. There are a lot of good people too. I don't want to suggest that all of South Minneapolis is bad. It was a great place to grow up. But as I've grown up and seen some of my um, peers, a lot of them haven't learned fucking anything, nothing. They just have this racist attitude, and I didn't even know where it comes from. I mean, we grew up in the same place, we went to the same fucking school. The only possible thing could be is that they learned it from their parents. But I always say, if you learn something from your parents, that's well and good. But when you become a certain age, you know the difference between right and wrong. So doing it because your folks did it, that's no fucking excuse. But on Martin Luther King Day, I always think about a story that I remember from when I was in grade school. I was hanging out with one of my best friends. After school, we went back to his house to do whatever, Hot Wheels, Legos, whatever the fuck we did. Okay. And in school that day, we were talking about Martin Luther King. He was still alive at the time. And as we were talking about what we had learned that day in school, his father heard us. Now, you have to understand his father, ironically, was from Iowa. He was evangelical and he was a conservative fucking nutcase. And he seemed to be kind of an angry man anyway. Anyway, when he heard us talking about Martin Luther King, he said, "Why are you talking about this guy? He's nothing more than a criminal." And we thought that was weird. How could he be a criminal? Our teacher was telling us about him. And then he pointed out that Martin Luther King had been in jail a number of times. So as young kids, we thought, well, if he's been in fucking jail, he must be a criminal. Of course, the times he'd been in jail were for civil disobedience, for fighting against racism, but we didn't know that. So this guy's dad got on a roll about people of color, black people, African Americans. And he explained to us further that in the Bible, it specifically says that black people were meant to be white people's slaves. Now, 8, 9 years old, I never read the fucking Bible. I didn't know what it said. But this guy obviously is a big time religious guy. So I'm saying, really? That seems weird. So anyway, later on, I go home and I'm telling this to my mom. And my mom immediately got very angry. And she looked at me and I said, I didn't do anything. And she goes, "I'm not mad at you." So she calls this man up and gives him what for. And I'm sure he didn't listen to a fucking thing. But my mom was liberal, very nice woman, compassionate woman, and she was anything but racist. And she was upset that this fucking clown was teaching her kid that racism was a good thing. But you have to understand in the 60s and 70s, racism was pretty much accepted. You did everything you did. You could say whatever you could wanted to say without any shame or without any retribution. it wasn't a good time really in terms of racial issues. We had some race riots, we had all kinds of problems in those days. And the thing about Martin Luther King that intrigues me and impresses me and causes me to admire him is he had to be a brave man. I mean, you look at us right now as Democrats, and we're fighting against the Republicans. We have about as many people as they do. We have a lot going for us. Democrats are as formidable as Republicans, right? Well, when Martin Luther King and some of the other people that were assisting him in the process of trying to get civil rights passed, you have to understand where they were when they were doing this. They first and foremost were a minority. They didn't have the same odds that those people fighting against them had. And on top of that, Martin Luther King wanted to do it completely passively. They weren't going to go to war in the streets. Yes, there were some riots now and again, but Martin Luther King pushed peace just to go head to head with words and try to gain some ground and get his people some of the rights they so richly deserved. And he did that. And that's the fucking amazing thing. He had insurmountable odds to actually accomplish anything, and he made some ground. He improved the lot of people of color out of sheer will and ability to bring people together. He was a great orator, and he was able to make a difference, improve things for his people. Now, of course, that was too much for white people, so they shot and killed him. He ended up being kind of a martyr. And if anybody deserved to be a martyr, it is him. That's exactly what he is. He was fighting the good fight, and some white fuck decided that that was too much. But that's why I admire him. He walked into a fight with nothing going his way. It was completely insurmountable. The odds of him winning this were zero, but he still did it. And the people that followed him and the people that helped him along the way did the same thing. That is an incredible act of bravery. You don't see the Republicans wading into anything unless they know they have the advantage because they're cowards. Well, Martin Luther King and all the people in the civil rights that were fighting to get civil rights, these weren't cowards. These were heroes. And today we see differences in this country than we saw in the 60s and 70s because of them. Now, we haven't come as far as we'd like. We maybe didn't even come as far as we thought. Now that Donald Trump comes out and makes it okay for racists to start talking again. But we have made some headway, and we've got a long way to go to make everything equal. But I give Martin Luther King a lot of credit for starting this at a time when he had virtually no chance. And still, he improved some things. He made up some ground. So to take a day like Martin Luther King Day to pay tribute to him, I can't think of a more important person in this country we should pay tribute to. And people will say, well, I'm white. What do I care? Well, you're also an American, and people of color are part of America. And the people of color, if they're treated equally, they just make this country more powerful and more effective. And if you can't see that, then you're a fucking racist. Get the fuck out of the way because I don't care. So it is Martin Luther King Day. And we are celebrating it. And as I've said, I have much admiration for Martin Luther King and all the other people that were involved in the civil rights fight. I watch a lot of documentaries. I watch a lot of videos of that time. I remember it from when I was small and watching it on TV. And I'm just amazed what they decided to do and the effort they made and the accomplishments they achieved. It is truly impressive. So happy Martin Luther King Day. We got another big day today. No, not the Caucasus. We'll talk about that in a minute. The big day is I'm going over to see my granddaughter, little Junie. We're going to hang out. Grandma and Grandpa are going over to hang out with little Junie at, 11 o'clock today. It depends on when you're watching this. We might already be over there, but I'm excited about it. It's always fun. Even though that little girl often dismisses me in deference to my wife or her grandmother, I'm cool with it. If she's, if she's, if she's looking toward my wife or grandmother before me, I get it. I would do the same if I were her. So anyway, we're going to go over and do that. I don't know what all is going to be accomplished, but it's going to be fun. And I'm no doubt going to be put in my place at one point or another by my my wife, my granddaughter, and maybe my son. He's a little more cautious. He's a more sensitive guy, big, good-looking kid, but he's more sensitive than I am. He's more like his mom, so I'll say some things to him instead of biting back at me like my younger son would. He'd be more apt to be hurt by it. So I have to be careful with him. Another thing I want to bring up now, I don't typically talk about physical appearance because I've got a lot of issues I got to fucking deal with. So I don't really worry about them much. My hair, my whatever. But you notice my face is really red and blotchy. I'm wondering what the fuck is that? I mean, don't I have enough problems? I don't drink, so it's not that. And then I realized what it was. My wife and I went to a women's Gopher hockey game yesterday. And of course, my wife has to park the furthest distance away from the arena. And I got to walk through, you know, 2-degree weather with probably wind chills of 10 or 15, shit blown in my face. And that's got to be it. Kind of a windburn or some fucking thing because my face was goddamn freezing. Anyway, fortunately, I have bigger issues and worse traits in my face than the blotchiness. So I'm thinking you can probably deal with it. It probably won't be a problem. Last thing I want to bring up, I think I told you on the podcast yesterday. Um, we have I have a viewer on the podcast and listens to the podcast as well. I'm not sure which one he does, but he's always around watching what's going on. He makes a lot of comments to me, and I appreciate that. Um, his name is TJ, and I told you that TJ wrote me a note and sent me a picture and said, "I'm tired of waiting for you to make merch." So I made my own, and he sent me a picture of him and his wife wearing uh, T-shirts with the picture you see on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or even TikTok to a certain extent. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. And then, of course, I posted it on Facebook and Instagram. So if you haven't seen it, you can go there and find it there. And now, of course, everybody's going, I want one. I'll buy one. I'll take one. Well, they're not for sale because he just made it for himself. He also said he's made one for me. And I'm going, what the fuck am I going to wear that? I'm going to walk around with a picture of my face on my t shirt. That's a little cringy. I don't know. Anyway, I'm talking to a couple of folks. I wanted to get a different logo, but he convinced me that logo might work because it's one everybody knows and recognizes, and at least for a first run of something, maybe it will work. So I'm working on that. Actually, I'm going to have somebody help me work on it because I'm lazy and a procrastinator. So I'll probably just not not do it unless I've got somebody doing it for me. So that's what we're doing. And hopefully that'll be coming up soon. I don't know how many would want anything like that, a t-shirt, a hat, a mug. I don't know, but there are companies out there that will do it for you and then ship it for you and all that stuff. And that's the way it's going to have to be. I told you that I I would want to donate the money to a good cause, whether it be Old Souls organization that she works with or whatever, and I will do that. Um, but I've got to get the merch first, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, how many people could want a T-shirt or a hat? I don't fucking know. Anyhow, that's where we're at, catching up with some house cleaning business. All right, we have a couple of emails. First one comes from Gracie. Hi, Mike. First of all, it was totally cool to read my email to you regarding money to Old Soul. I will follow up on the website she mentions. Now, regarding Jacques, I said the name Jack. It's pronounced like Jacques Cousteau, not Jack, LOL, Gracie. And I think I gave it out. I don't have it here in front of me right now, but Jacques is a dog. Looks like a German Shepherd. And Gracie is a human. And for whatever reason, she's one of those folks. And I told my wife about her, and she said, she's my new hero. What do you mean by that? Anyway, Gracie had built out a very nice van. And she travels around and she lives in the van. And apparently she has something on YouTube um, about her travels. I haven't checked it out yet, but I'm going to check it out because it sounds cool. I think it's called The Adventures of Gracie and Jacques on YouTube. So check that out. I will check it out too. Gracie, thank you for the correction. I should have known by the way you spelled it, but I'm old, I'm lazy, and I'm dumb. So forgive me. All right, this next one comes from Max, and I kind of was half guessing that this would come. Rational Boomer, I'm writing to you just one more time. You've got into my head and I want to get you out. Well, who doesn't? Less than a week ago, you read my email to you about Project 2025. Don't worry, I'm not writing again to ask you to talk about it. I'm done with that. After you read the email on your show, you went on for more than a quarter of your show describing how annoyed, well, it wasn't a quarter of my show, maybe it was, annoyed you were with it, as you thought that I was trying to shame you, supposedly to get my way. You were quite forceful in describing how the email made you feel. Just being honest, man. I was shocked that I had that kind of impact with my words and I didn't understand. I felt bad. I reread my email and thought that I kind of understood why you felt the way you did. I decided that it would be best to write you and apologize while also trying to make you understand why I had been so persistent. I then heard you mention this issue and my name mentioned during your show 3 or 4 more times on some of the following shows. I became surprised that you didn't read my apology email on any of the shows. I remember you once saying that if someone took the time to write an email to the show, you would read it. I then came to the conclusion that you were very upset with me. I decided to let it drop and just move on. Like I said earlier, you kept getting into my head. I thought maybe not reading the email was just an oversight. Later, I thought to myself, being too persistent wasn't that big of a deal. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, certainly not you. I kept thinking of it. I thought the Project 2025 is a real important issue. Why would it bother you so much? I remember how silly I thought everyone was in 1999 about Y2K. It was all over the news just about every day for more than a year. Now, this thing that I'm very concerned about is not being talked about on the news or by none of the people I know, and it could result in the end of the USA as we know it. As I said in my apology email, I have watched our country move more and more closer to tyranny over the past 50 years. I thought it could get worse. I thought it couldn't get worse than when ALEC caused a law to be passed in numerous states, making murder legal if you just call it stand your ground. And then Trayvon Martin was murdered. I saw discussing Project 2025 as fitting into your format. I saw that Trump was almost certainly done, so I thought the best thing to do was move the focus and half of our energy on ending the Republican Party and spreading the word on the dangers of the conservative billionaires. Again, I apologize for my persistence and I won't write again. I also will no longer listen to every podcast, but we'll listen to them when they're convenient or when there's big news happening. Please know that I'm not trying to get you to expand your show to Project 2025 or to any other subject. I just wanted you to know why I did what I did. I definitely do not want to upset you further. I sincerely wish you continued success with your podcast. Um, damn. I sincerely wish you continued success with your podcast. Thank you, Max. All right, Max. I think that you're overthinking this. First of all, I don't get upset about anything. Um, I do get annoyed from time to time. Um, and to be perfectly honest with you, the first couple lines of your email were a little passive aggressive. I'm so sad you didn't decide to do this, even though I asked you to do it. That's a little passive aggressive. And that's what kind of annoyed me too. I don't have a problem with talking about 2025. And you don't have to write an email apologizing. Now, you said you wrote an email apologizing and I didn't read it. I don't know why that would be. I read every email I get. I even read some emails that I shouldn't read, as Gracie noted. Um, I either didn't see the email or I missed it somehow, so it wasn't intentionally done. And that's what I'm saying. You're reading in too much of this, that this is something that is weighing on my mind. That's not how I think. If I'm in a situation where I'm angry about something, not even angry, annoyed about something, I deal with it and I move on and it's over and it's done. It's not a big deal. You gave me the opportunity to kind of go off on a lot of people in this country that have this fatalistic view of what's going to be. Like I said, I get people coming to me every day saying, I'm worried about this. Please talk me off the ledge. I'm trying to get people not to worry as much. The 2025 thing is important if the Republicans get power. And as I've told you before, I don't think that's going to happen. So why give it extra time? See, that's the problem why Donald Trump was elected, because the media gave him time. It was a way to scare people or excite people or have him run his little shit show, and he got legitimacy for it. I don't want to give 2025 that Project 2025 any legitimacy. And I don't really want to talk about it that much until it's actually a worry. I mean, I can write a manifesto today. That doesn't mean it's worth a shit. I mean, everything the Republicans put out these days is a joke. It fails. So I just don't want to get worked up about that thing. But I will give you this tip, Max. Um, there's a fellow TikToker. His name is Hawk. I talk about him from time to time. Jace and some of the other people mention him too. He's very good. He's an attorney and he has a brand new podcast. I haven't listened to it, but I know he's good at what he does. He has a brand new podcast. It's on YouTube right now. And he spends about 40 minutes talking about 2025. That was his choice. I guarantee you he knows more about it than I do. I'll guarantee you that he has as many or more followers than I do. So he will put that word out. If you really want to hear it, I would listen to that. He's probably got a pretty good show on it. I kind of half feel like your email was kind of a breakup letter. I'm mad, so I'm not going to listen anymore, or maybe I'll listen from time to time. Here's the deal, Max. I've always said everybody's welcome to listen. Everybody's welcome to come on the show. In fact, I would say to you, Max, if you really want to talk about 2025, all you have to do is email me, say I want to be on the show, and give us a lesson. I'm happy to give you the time to do that, but I'm not going to scare folks about something that isn't even real yet. It's just words on paper written by dumb fucks that constantly fail. That's it. And I'll tell you this, Max, if you think my mind is overwhelmed with irritation by that one email or anything anybody says, I'm not. I'll tell you something. I get negative feedback, mean shit, cruel shit, and I don't care about that. It doesn't bother me. I get it all day, every day on TikTok, sometimes here, and it really doesn't bother me. I don't let things like that bother me. And your letter to me was just kind of an annoyance because I hear so many people with this fatalistic attitude. Oh no, the world's going to end. And if this happens, the world's going to end. I just choose not to worry about shit that doesn't happen or isn't happening yet. Max, you're more than welcome to listen. You're more than welcome to come on the show if you'd like. But if you don't want to listen, that's cool too. Whenever I do the podcast or TikToks, my attitude has always been I do what I do. People want to listen, cool. People don't want to listen, that's fine too. But I'll tell you this, Max. If you think I'm consumed with anger or upset or annoyance because of that email or anything anybody else says to me, you're mistaken. I'm not. You know, when I do TikToks and I do the podcast, it's maybe weird for people to understand this. I say what I say on the TikToks. I say what I say on the podcast in the moment at that time. When I'm done, you could probably come back to me and ask me what I said. I probably couldn't tell you. I mean, I'd know the facts as I portray them in the podcast and on TikTok, but I don't remember what I say. I know what I'm saying when I say it, but everything that happened yesterday or longer ago, that's old news to me. I don't worry about it anymore. And that's one of the reasons I feel pretty good. I don't worry about the past as much. I don't worry about things I can't control. I worry about the things I can control. Project 2025 at this moment and this time, I can only control one way, making sure that Republicans don't come to power. Because if they don't come to power, that's not an issue. So that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on putting out the fire before I worry about the cleanup, if you understand what I'm saying. So I don't want to belabor this anymore. I apologize if I didn't read your apology letter. It wasn't intentional. I either didn't see it or I didn't get it or whatever the fuck happened. I don't know. I could have missed it. I'm old and sometimes feeble. So I could have missed it. But the important thing is you don't need to apologize. Nobody needs to apologize to me. You can't hurt my feelings. This is hopefully a platform where people speak their minds, and not everybody that comes here has to agree with me. I may debate you on the topic if I believe you're wrong, and hopefully you take it in the spirit that it's given. But you don't have to apologize. Nobody has to apologize for me. I made the choice to read that email on there. I knew what it was about, and I knew what I thought. So don't apologize to me. There's no need for that. I'm not looking for sympathy and I'm not looking for apologies. It's just not necessary. We're in a big fight here and we have to be serious about it and we have to go after these people. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the things that are imminent, that are important, and deal with those things before we deal with years in the future. Because that's the only way you can get things done. When you start worrying about all the things that may happen, it becomes overwhelming and you don't get anything done. Focus on the things in front of you, get them fixed, and keep working your way up to the point where if Project 2025 is a problem, you deal with it. Again, Max, thanks for the email. No need for the apology. Don't worry about me. I'm not agonizing or consumed by anything anybody says to me. I get enough. I don't care. I don't take it to heart. And, you know, when I do get in arguments with somebody like my kids or my wife or something, here's the way it goes. We argue back and forth. It might get a little heated, but 15 minutes after it's done, I've forgotten about it. It's not a big deal. So don't be worried that I'm mad at you or anybody else. And whether you think I took a quarter of my show talking about it, if you think that means something, okay. But the point is, I just talk about what's on my mind. There is no script here. There is nothing. And I think it's important that people like you get a chance to express your opinions, and I will express mine. Now, we won't always agree, but that's okay. Nobody fucking cares. See, this is how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to negotiate. We're supposed to compromise. We're supposed to talk about stuff. We don't necessarily have to agree. But here's the deal. I take in account everything people suggest to me. Some things I will take, some things I won't. But you shouldn't be hurt by that. I had somebody a while back who was trying to suggest how I should do the show. And I said, you know what? Anybody can be on the show and say whatever they want, but I reserve the right to produce this show because it's my name, it's my face on it. And whether I'm right or wrong, I got to pay the price in the end. So thank you for the email, Max. And I would check out Hawk's. I think it's called Hawk Droppings or something. But look for Hawk on YouTube, and you'll see his podcast. And I know he just said he did one on 2025. And you can rest assured that he will reach as many or more people than I do. All right, let's move on. Former President Donald Trump made an odd last minute plea to his supporters ahead of today's caucus. Now, he was speaking at a rally in Indianola, Iowa on Sunday. The former president urged his fans to caucus at all costs. Now, it's cold as fuck out there. It's sub-zero. Wind chills are even worse. It's snowing. But he wants fans to get out there and participate in the caucus. This is what Trump said. He says, you can't sit at home. If you're sick as a dog, you say, darling, even if you vote and then pass away, it's worth it. So he said, I don't care if you're sick, go out and vote. Even if you pass away in the end, it's worth it. Not to them, to you maybe, but that's what Donald Trump is all about. It's all about him. Give a fuck about you. Now, the remark drew a laugh from the crowd and a smile from the former president. Voter apathy is undoubtedly something Trump is looking to avoid, particularly considering the latest polls showing him winning the Hawkeye state by as many as 30 points. See, that's what Donald Trump always does, and that's the excuse he always uses. They always say, oh, he was just joking. He says some horrible shit, but he was just joking. I know what he's doing. I've told people this before. For me, as a consummate smartass, people are always thinking that I'm joking. Whatever I say, I might say some smart or some mean shit to somebody, and they always laugh. But the wonderful thing about being a smartass is you can say what you really mean to somebody. They think it's a joke. You get it off your chest. It's very cathartic, and everybody goes home with a smile. And that's exactly what he's fucking doing. Now, another potential factor in caucus turnout, the temperatures are expected to go below zero today, which they are. Wind chills potentially going to minus 45 degrees. Have you ever been outside with a wind chill of minus 45 degrees? I have many times. Fucked up. I mean, I think I told you a story one time that there was a comedian I saw at one of the clubs here way back when, and he happened to be on. He was from California, and he was on stage during one of these days when it was minus 45 degrees, and he said, "Who the fuck would want to live in a place where you can die by simply going outside?" Now that's funny, but it's true. You stand outside too long with exposed skin at minus 45-degree wind chill, you literally can die. And that's one of the things that worry me the most about my family when they're out in their cars and it's minus whatever, and they get stuck or spun out or something like that, and they're exposed to the elements. I'm very fearful of that. So I make sure my phone is always on when it stays like that so they can get in touch with me right away. Now, Trump went on to make reference to the brutal forecasts. He said, so you be safe. You're going to be safe, Trump said. and it's going to be all indoors, but you got to get up. You know, that's a funny thing about Donald Trump. Anytime you read one of his sentences, they make absolutely no sense. They're horrible grammatically, and they make no sense. See, he's got all these things going in his mind, and he just spews things, and he presumes that people understand what he means. But most people don't have a fucked up head like that, so they don't presume to know what the fuck he's saying. So he's just confusing. Apparently, the Trumplafucks can decode his little coded language. But people of a normal mind like you and I, we don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Now, the other guy that's kind of on the hook in Iowa today, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, he wants voters to know he likes being the underdog. He's saying, I'm losing, but I'm good with it. I like it like this. The Republican presidential primary contender tried to dismiss middling poll numbers while making his final pitch to Iowa caucus goers while he was on ABC this week on Sunday, yesterday. He says it's good to be an underdog. We're going to do well, but I'd rather have people count us out. I'd rather have people lower expectations for us. I tend to perform better like that. Yeah, you were losing in Florida till Donald Trump boosted you. You would have lost that one fucking easily enough. But Donald Trump's not helping you now. In fact, he's working against you. While DeSantis was once considered Donald Trump's most formidable rival, he has failed to woo many Republican voters, unable to convert MAGA diehards or appeal to the Trump skeptical side of the party. See, that's the thing. He's in a horrible spot. MAGA's never going to vote for him. And the middle ground people, the alleged reasonably minded people, aren't going to vote for him because he's a goofy, creepy fuck. Now, on Saturday, NBC News Des Moines Register Mediacom's Iowa survey was released showing DeSantis polling now in third place with only 16% of voters calling him their top choice. Trump, he's still leading with 48% of the voters, and Nikki Haley has 20%. So she's second behind Donald Trump. She's way behind. But the real race here in Iowa is who comes in second. Because for whatever reason, they think the person who comes in second will have some momentum going to New Hampshire or wherever else they're going. And they think that's good news for them. We'll see how it translates in New Hampshire or some of the other places. But it's conceivable that if Ron DeSantis has a bad showing here in Iowa, don't be surprised if he drops out. He doesn't like to be embarrassed any more than anybody else, so he may just want to back the fuck out of this thing. Now, despite the numbers, DeSantis seemed undaunted during a rally at the Des Moines offices of his super PAC, Never Back Down, on Saturday, where he told supporters they can throw a blizzard at us and we are going to fight. They can throw wind chill at us and we're going to fight. Oh, what a powerful message. They can throw media narratives at us and we are going to fight. They can throw fake polls at us. Oh, fake polls. Yeah, those are the polls that show that you're losing. The polls that show that you're winning, they're not fake, right? We're going to fight because we're going to turn this country around. I wouldn't bet on it. Now, Iowa Republicans will make their final decision during caucus events across the Hawkeye state today. I don't know when we'll get results, but the fact of the matter is that if Donald Trump wins this caucus, he will win by an historical amount. He's at 48%. Nikki Haley's at 20%. If he wins by 28%, which is conceivable, there will be, as far as I know, no other candidate that's won by that much before. And of course, Donald Trump is going to make hay all about that. And he's going to talk about how powerful he is and how he's going to be president. But that's all bullshit. Here's the thing you have to understand, and I think Eric brought this up one time when he was on the program, being that he's from Iowa. The Iowa caucus doesn't really have a great track record of choosing the ultimate president. The last time that they elected or voted for a candidate that won the presidency in Iowa, the last one that actually went on to become president was George W. Bush 24 years ago in 2000. And the last time they predicted the Democratic winner of the presidential election, that was in 2008, and that was Barack Obama. Since those times, they've been wrong every time. So, given that Donald Trump will win the Iowa caucus, I wouldn't get too excited about it, given the track record of the Iowa caucuses, because generally, whoever wins the Iowa caucus ends up going on to fucking lose. So, Donnie, you can wallow in the sunshine or the sub-zero temperatures, however you want to look at it. But the value in winning in Iowa under these circumstances isn't worth much. It isn't worth much at all. So we'll see what happens. You know, it's interesting. Ron DeSantis said something as well. He said, I know there's a lot of people standing in front of the camera saying they're going to vote for Iowa, but behind the scenes, they're telling me they're going to vote for me. And that would be about the speed of the Republican Party. No courage, no balls, all cowards. They don't want to piss off Donald Trump, but they might be willing to go behind the scenes and vote for somebody else just as long as their name and face aren't attached to that vote. That's what gutless cowards do. And that's who the Republican Party is. So, as much as Donald Trump leads significantly in this race, we may see something totally different happen. Just as I've told you before, polls don't mean shit. They're always wrong. And it'll be interesting to see how this caucus plays out based on the polls we've seen. Donald Trump has 48%, Nikki Haley has 20%, and Ron DeSantis has 16%. And this was taken yesterday, the day before the caucus. Now we'll see how accurate they were. They might have been accurate. They probably aren't. But we're going to see. And we're also going to see if Republicans do what Ron DeSantis said by, oh, yeah, I'm voting for you, Trump, but then behind the scenes vote for DeSantis or Nikki Haley. That could happen. There's another thing that can happen too. And I've heard there's talk of it. And it's perfectly legal, surprisingly. Apparently, Democrats can come in and register as Republicans in this thing and vote for who they want to. And if that happens, um, you're going to get Democrats voting probably for Nikki Haley just to shit on Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Now, there has been some historical precedence for this. I think back when Obama was running, there was like 57,000 Republicans coming out to vote for somebody other than Barack Obama. It happened, apparently. It didn't work, but don't be surprised if you see some Democrats creep up and vote for their favorite Republican candidate, which is nobody, but they'll vote for Nikki Haley just to shit on Donald Trump. And I'm all for that. The thing is, the caucus folks know they do this. It's perfectly legal. So if that's perfectly legal, why even have the fucking caucus? Why? It makes no goddamn sense. Anyway, we are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. All right. The big story down in Georgia, of course, is this alleged scandal that some lawyer is accusing Fani Willis of. The accusation is that she's having some kind of romantic affair with the special counsel that she hired to look into Donald Trump and the other 18 indicted uh, defendants. Again, as I've said before, even if it's true, so what? How does that change anything with the case. You know, you've got the legislators and you've got this one lawyer for a guy that represents Michael Roman, who's a defendant, who's a nobody. What happens if you do get Fani Willis kicked off the case? What happens? Nothing, because then somebody else in her office takes over and they finish the case. Whatever you claim happened with Fani Willis does not have any impact on the case. The fact is, the president and his 18 defendants broke laws and they should be held accountable. But as I've said before, too, as I understand it, this is coming from a divorce case where the documents are sealed. So, how do they know that any of this is true? Especially since they provided no evidence of this thing. This smells of Republican strategy. Just pull anything out of your ass, make presumptions, make assumptions, and throw it out there as if they're real, and uh, and hope people believe it. Unfortunately for Trump-fucks and lawyers in this case, only dumb fucks believe it, or only dumb fucks care. Now, people have been waiting for Fani Willis to see what she has to say about this. And Fani Willis made her first public comments on Sunday since a co defendant of former President Donald Trump alleged she had an inappropriate relationship with a special prosecutor she hired to oversee the case. It's ironic that they would complain about that because of all the inappropriate relationships I've heard as of late. Um, it's mostly been Republicans. Donald Trump, Jim Jordan, the two clowns down in Florida with their three-way whatever the fuck. There's a lot of inappropriate shit going on in our politics. It's ironic that you'd want to get Fani Willis. You know, the legislature, I think I read an email about this yesterday, the legislature in Georgia wanted to make a rule where they could just fire her just because they wanted to, and that wasn't working. So this smells of something tied to all that, something that coming from the legislature, some dumb Republican. And if it is coming from a dumb Republican, here's what we know. They always lie, they always get caught, and they always fail. So I'm not really worried about this situation at all. Now, the defendant, former Trump campaign staffer Michael Roman, is one of 19 people charged in the RICO case in their attempt to undermine the 2020 presidential election. Now, Roman filed a bombastic motion last week accusing Willis of having a secret romantic relationship with top prosecutor Nathan Wade, who has been paid more than $650,000 in legal fees since January of 2022. Now, Roman claimed Willis hired Wade as part of a self-serving arrangement that provided financial benefits to both of them. The motion did not include any evidence to back up the claims. Well, of course they didn't. There's no evidence. But they knew it happened. They're pretty sure it happened. Just let us investigate it for 3 years and we'll probably find something. Very much like the Republican House members. They don't have evidence, but they just know. They just know something fishy's been going on. Just give us a chance to find it. Well, all the while, we've got Donald Trump and the 18 other people down in Georgia have hardcore documented evidence against them. So you're saying this rumor, this bullshit should take precedence over actual felony charges. Now, Willis on Sunday spoke about the accusations during a speech at the historic Big Bethel AME Church in Atlanta, defending her hiring decisions and calling Wade a man of impeccable credentials. She said, I'm a little confused. I appointed 3 special counselors, Willis said Sunday. It's my right to do, paid them all the same hourly rate. They only attack one. I hired one white woman, a good personal friend, and a great lawyer, a superstar, I tell you. I hired one white man, brilliant, my friend, and a great lawyer. And I hired one black man, another superstar. She did not address any romantic link between the pair, but called Wade a great friend and a great lawyer who was paid the same rate as the two other special prosecutors hired to work on the Trump case. The motion, she suggested, seemed to be motivated by race. And that's kind of interesting that she would say that. Donald Trump keeps talking about Fani Willis and Letitia James being racist. Well, if Letitia or Fani Willis was racist, why would she hire a white woman and a white man? And why would this one lawyer go after the one black man? Pulling something out of their ass that they have no evidence for. Why would they do that? Well, because they're probably being influenced by the Republican legislature in Georgia, and we know they're all a bunch of racist fucks. First thing Willis said, first thing they say, oh, she's going to play the race card now, Willis said while reading a letter to the congregation. But no, God, isn't it them that's playing the race card when they only question one? Isn't it them playing the race card when they consistently or constantly think, I need someone from some other jurisdiction in some other state to tell me how to do a job I've been doing for almost 30 years? You did not tell me as a woman of color it would not matter what I did, she added. My motive, my talent, my ability, and my character would be constantly attacked. Now, Trump, of course, has seized on the legal filing, saying it amounted to evidence that the case should be thrown out as of now, totally compromised. He said he mentions evidence, but didn't we just say earlier there is no evidence? See, with Donald Trump, no evidence means there is evidence, which makes no fucking sense. He goes on to say it's illegal. What she did is illegal. The former president claimed without evidence. So we'll let the state handle that. But what a sad situation it is. Donald Trump probably hasn't even read this thing. He doesn't even know what the fuck is going on. But he seizes an opportunity where he thinks Fani Willis has a weakness and he jumps on it. See, that's what Donald Trump does. He talks without knowing much. He hasn't investigated anything. All he has to hear is something bad and he jumps all over it and acts as if he knows something. But Donald Trump doesn't know anything. He's proved that day in and day out since he was elected president and since he was kicked out of the presidency when Joe Biden beat his ass. Now, Donald Trump's got a new whipping boy or whipping girl, if you will. Trump is taking his case against former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley to an usual audience, the overwhelmingly Democratic viewership on MSNBC. He's so scared of Nikki Haley that he's running ads on MSNBC. The 30-second TV spot blast Haley, who served as Trump's ambassador to the United Nations for proposing an increase in Social Security's retirement age for future retirees. Well, Donnie, your buddies, your supporters have talked about getting rid of Social Security and Medicare. So now you have the audacity to talk about Haley's plans for increasing the age. And I heard her say it. I've seen the video, so I know she did say it. And that's bad enough. But how dare you shame her for this when what you're doing and the people you're connected to want to just throw old people to the wolves? Let them starve, let them become homeless. But this is so much classic Donald Trump. The segment which Trump campaign posted on X on Thursday includes a news clip in which Haley says the country must raise the retirement age for people in their 20s to reflect life expectancy. Hey, with this climate change and uh, the healthcare system the way it is, I've been hearing that the life expectation has been going down. It's been going down. So maybe we should lower the age of Social Security. I mean, if one is good, raise it because people are living longer. If they're living less long, why not let people take Social Security and Medicare earlier? Americans were promised a secure retirement. Nikki Haley's plan ends that. the narrator says, as footage of a diverse array of seniors appear on the screen. Well, so do your buddies, Don. They want to get rid of it altogether. So shut the fuck up. Now, a publication called Semaphore reported on Saturday that Trump campaign was deliberately airing the ad on MSNBC to reach Democrats who are considering voting for Haley in New Hampshire's open primary. and they might do that. And that's a much more sketchy situation because she's not that far behind Donald Trump in New Hampshire. Get some Democrats out there to kick Donald Trump out of the primary. That's conceivable. New Hampshire, where even Republican voters lean a bit more libertarian than MAGA, is the early primary state where Trump is most likely to suffer an upset defeat. And we know how bad he hates taking defeat. He can't accept defeat. He's going to say it was faked, it was a hoax. There was problems with the voting machines. You know it's coming. Haley has been climbing in the polls in the Granite State. As of Sunday, she trails Trump by just 11 percentage points, according to an average of public polls. Now, Axios reported on Sunday that Haley stands to pick up support from Democrats and independents in the Iowa caucuses today. Several of those voters told Axios that they were caucusing for her in a bid to block Trump's path to the Republican nomination. The Trump campaign has apparently concluded that Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents are part of her base of support in New Hampshire as well. I will say this, they may be supporting her in New Hampshire and Iowa, but they don't support her in the general election. It doesn't mean these people are going to side with her come the general election if she's the nominee. All they're trying to do is shit on Donald Trump, and I'm all for that. Anyway, but hitting Haley for wanting to cut Social Security could also help Trump with some conservative voters wary of attacks on the popular social insurance program. Now, the vast majority of Americans want their Social Security and Medicare benefits preserved, not just Republicans, not just Democrats, but also independents. Haley's campaign spokesperson, Olivia Perez Cubas, told Semaphore that the ad shows that Trump is terrified of Nikki Haley's rise. He is terrified. Donald Trump's terrified about a lot of things right now. You can see it in his face. He's got a lot of things to be terrified. And I'll be honest with you, Nikki Haley is the least of his problems. Going to jail is probably his biggest problem. But we'll see what happens. Now, Representative Matt Gaetz apparently isn't happy about the Republican deal with the Democrats in the Senate to solve the immigration crisis and to keep the government open. Instead, Speaker Mike Johnson is expected to support another continuing resolution, as I mentioned yesterday. And this is interesting. As I've said before, coming up with spending bills and a budget plan have been over the decades pretty easily. Democrats and Republicans know they have to compromise and come up with something. They can't shut down the government. Otherwise, they're going to take some heat. And in this situation, more so the Republicans than Democrats. And the Republicans know this. The problem we have here is the Matt Gaetzes or the MAGA or the Trumplafucks or the Freedom Caucus, whatever you want to call them, don't want anything but chaos. They want to put this country in a tailspin, shut down the government. So they come up with an immigration plan that's absolutely draconian. Nobody wants it. Certainly the Democrats aren't going to vote for it. The Senate will never pass it. And most independent and conservative Republicans don't want it. So they keep pushing this ridiculous immigration thing that nobody's going to vote for. And they're trying to strong arm people by saying, well, if you don't vote for it, we'll just shut down the country. Somebody's got to put MAGA in their place. They aren't that powerful. The only reason they have power is because the Republicans allow them to have the power. And when are the Republicans going to get balls enough to say, fuck yourself, you're done? That's all they have to do, but they refuse to do it. Now, while the vote will require Democrat support to mass, Johnson now must face off against Gaetz and other so-called Freedom Caucus members who voted to remove Speaker Kevin McCarthy from doing the same thing to him. And some of those Freedom Caucus people have said as much, that that's what they're going to do. Now, taking to social media Friday, Gates demanded that the U.S. border be closed completely. On Saturday, Gates posted his displeasure with the deal Senator James Lankford negotiated, calling it a disaster. You know, the funny thing about it is the only person or the only people calling this a disaster is the Freedom Caucus. And you goofy motherfuckers haven't come up with a good idea in the last 2 years. The Washington Post explained that Johnson was ready to solve all the problems when he came into the Speaker's office. Then he found out how difficult it was to appease everyone, including the far right. You mean he had to get in the office to realize this was an impossible job? I think you and I knew that it was an impossible job before he even took it. But he got carried away with his ego and said, I'm going to be the Speaker of the House and I'm going to wield some power. You fucked around and found out, didn't you, Mike? Now you're hanging by a thread because your your puppeteer, MAGA, is pulling your strings, and when you go against those strings, they're just going to dump you on your ass. Now, it's a question colleagues say Johnson is still struggling with. Just shy of his 100th day serving as Speaker of the House, Johnson has had to gather the reins of an unruly conference that at every turn has tested his ability to steady them. A proud, staunch conservative, Johnson had believed his reputation within the House Freedom Caucus would help manage their demands in a way that former Speaker Kevin McCarthy could not. Looks like the motherfucker was wrong. Johnson could be the name behind passing landmark immigration laws that have been impossible since President Ronald Reagan's administration. Now, after Lankford's negotiation, Johnson called it a non starter. In fact, he posted on social media, absolutely not. The Schumer Lankford deal isn't all that dissimilar to the deal that McCarthy and President Joe Biden made earlier in 2023, but he makes a good point. The President of the United States and the Speaker of the House of the opposing party came to a deal. And what did the opposing party do? What did Kevin McCarthy do? Fucking reneged on the deal. Why do you go in and negotiate and compromise and cut a deal if you have no intention of sticking to it? See, that's the problem with negotiating with these fucks. They tell you one thing and they do another. The Post explained that after speaking with 24 Republican lawmakers and aides, the members aren't happy with Johnson. Well, no shit. Nobody's happy with Johnson. He's a fucking idiot. He's a weirdo and a creep. It became clear that frustration is growing with Johnson, the report said. Governing conservatives who are tired of the antics of the far right fear he remains too focused on appeasing them when they won't be happy regardless of the decisions he makes. But Johnson can't ignore hardliners either. He faces mounting pressure from the emboldened right flank that is privately telegraphing plan to gum up the legislative process on the House floor. So this continuing resolution, when they do vote for it, is going to pass. And the only way it's going to pass is because the Democrats will vote as well. And there's enough Republicans and enough Democrats to get the, 207 votes or whatever it is, and it will pass. And then MAGA will be mad, and then we'll have to see what MAGA does. Are they going to call for a vote of no confidence with Mike Johnson? Probably. But when they do and they kick him out, who are they going to bring in next? They had a hell of a time coming up with Johnson. Would it take like 2 weeks to get that done? And all the while that you don't have a Speaker of the House, that means the House of Representatives ain't doing shit. But that's all right, because in the 2 years, almost 2 years, that this Congress has been in session, the House of Representatives hasn't done shit anyway. And they're going to pay for it come the 2024 election, because people are going to talk about, the Democrats are going to talk about the unproductive House of Representatives in this particular Congress. Now, there was a report told about an incident where Representative Bob Good unleashed on Johnson for the deal. When Good implied that Johnson was abandoning his far right principles, Johnson grew visibly frustrated, telling Good that no one can challenge his conservative credentials, especially when he's trying to do the right thing by keeping the government operating. Yeah, see, there's the problem. The far right don't want the government operating, they want it shut down. So if you don't want it shut down, if you're not willing to do what you need to do to shut it down, then you aren't following what the right, the radical right, want. Now, 12 Republicans put a hold on all House business until Johnson spoke to them and agreed to hear their grievances. Representative Marjorie Trader Greene threatened to remove Johnson altogether. There's been a few others that have said that too. Now, Max Miller said if we just band together, we'd be okay. The speaker has no leverage because we're not unified. Right now, we're a little bit broken. A little bit broken? So, what Max Miller is saying that either the normal minded Republicans have to give in to MAGA, which isn't going to happen, or MAGA is going to have to give in to the reasonable minded Republicans. And I use that term loosely. And that's not going to happen. There is quite a chasm in that Republican Party, and it will never come together as long as it sits the way it sits now. That's why we have to do our best in 2024 to literally disable the Republican Party in the House. As long as the Republican Party is any kind of control, no matter how slim it is, very little, if anything, is going to get done. So, as a country, as a people, we have to make sure that change is made. Now, we'll get this continuing resolution. The Republicans will bitch and cry and try to oust Johnson. All the while, we should be dealing with some things that this country needs, like an actual spending bill. But they've had 2 or 3 continuing resolutions already. They push it out 2 months and they've done nothing. They're going to do it where another 2 months, month and a half, or something like that. And again, they will do nothing. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't do anything. There is no bill all the way up to the election. They're too divided. The Republican Party is a shit show. They know they're a shit show, and they know this is going to decimate them come the election in 2024. Why they aren't willing to do something about it or change something up, it's because they're fucking cowards. We got the vast majority of the Republicans in the House scared to death of 30 fucking MAGA idiots. Until they grow some balls and until they have some bravery, they're going to be stuck being led around by a bunch of crazy fucks. All right, now legal analyst Lisa Rubin was in New York's courtroom last week during the final day of Trump's fraud trial. She explained that it became undeniable that the presiding judge, Arthur Engoron, knew that the ex-president played him, which is what he did. Engoron said, no, you can't give the closing arguments. You won't agree to the rules. And while they're ending the trial, Donald Trump speaks out from the defense table and starts going on his rant, which was completely pointless. All shit we've heard before and all shit that means nothing. Now, as Trump begins to attack a new judge, this time in the E. Jean Carroll case, there's a new opportunity for a new Trump target. Now, Judge Lewis Kaplan presided over the first Carroll case last spring where a jury ruled against Trump. And although Trump never set foot in the courtroom, he's well familiar with Judge Kaplan's rulings, generally against him. Judge Kaplan ruled that because a jury found last spring that Donald Trump had sexually abused and defamed E. Jean Carroll, those issues are not up for debate at this trial, much like Rudy Giuliani's defamation filed with respect to those 2 Georgia election workers that recently included. The only issue here is about damages. So once again, Donald Trump is going to have another trial where he's already been considered guilty or liable, and they're going to try to come up with damages. So E. Jean Carroll's going into this case already having won. It's just going to see how much Donald Trump is going to have to pay. Last time it was 5 million. I'm guessing it's bigger than that. And frankly, if Judge Kaplan is smart, he'll make it substantially bigger than that. You need to make it hurt. The guy is habitually defaming um, E. Jean Carroll. He loses a case and then he does it the next night. Actually, that night he defames her. So clearly, that $5 million judgment wasn't enough to shut his face up. And since we have the same judge, hopefully the judge will say, listen, okay, if 5 million doesn't do it, let's try 20. I don't know what he'll do. I don't know if there are some restrictions as to how much he can fine for, but hopefully he learned a lesson and hopefully he'll do better this time. Now, she explained that Trump is testing how far he can push this judge, but she expects Kaplan to be less patient than Engoron. He's already been through it once with Donald Trump, so I would guess that's probably the case. Now, Rubin said that's both because of the difference between federal and state court and also because he picked the wrong guy to mess with, Rubin said. Lewis Kaplan is the same judge who presided over Sam Bankman-Fried's recent federal trial. He is known for being smart, no nonsense, and particularly protective of the people in his courtroom and the courthouse. I think you'll see if Trump tries more shenanigans, it's not going to work with Lewis Kaplan. Now, while Trump has complained that he wants to attend the trial and that the judge put him in a difficult position with dates for the case, the judge made it clear the trial would not be delayed, Rubin said. She doubts Trump will show up at all, and I'm guessing that's probably true. MSNBC host Alex Witt recalled the Trump meltdown in court before Engoron on Thursday and asked what Rubin gathered from the judge as he watched the drama unfold. Donald Trump is like a child. He keeps pushing these people and pushing these people. And for whatever reason, they let him get away with it. It's just going to take one judge to say, enough with the bullshit. We're going to put you on house arrest or put you in jail for a short period of time so you can gather how serious this whole thing is. We'll see if that happens. We'll see. But people are worried about whether Donald Trump will ever be accountable and will he ever pay for his misdeeds. He will. It may not come as fast as you want it, but the road Donald Trump is on, there's no way out for him. It's ultimate failure. Donald Trump is going down. He will not be president in 2024. The Republicans will have to stand back after the election in 2024 and decide what they're going to do next, because what they've been doing for 6 years, 7 years has not worked. So they're going to have to regroup and reimagine themselves. And that's why, going back to Project 2025, if that happens the way I say it does, Project 2025 is not a thing. And if we go further in the future in 2028, we know there's going to be even more millennials and Gen Zs voting. In fact, the majority of the voting bloc will be millennial and Gen Zs, and they vote Democrat to the tune of 75%. Now, the House Freedom Caucus railed against the latest short-term government funding bill, as we were talking about. They're going to pass the bill. And that could happen this week as well. This week is going to be a busy week. Today is the caucus. Tomorrow, the E. Jean Carroll case starts. In the next couple of weeks, we should find out what Judge Engoron is actually going to find as far as disgorgement or a fine, or however you want to look at it, how much Donald Trump's going to have to come out of pocket. And he's going to have to come out of pocket, even if he puts up a bond for an appeal. He doesn't have a chance in an appeal, and he doesn't have the cash to do it. So he's going to have to start liquidating things. But unfortunately, he's in receivership, so he doesn't get to make those decisions. In fact, if the receiver who's handling the money for his companies just wants to fire sale the shit just to satisfy whatever monies are owed, he or she can do that. And Donald Trump doesn't have anything to say about that. And of course, we know that's troubling for Donald Trump because he is a control freak. But when it comes to his businesses, when it comes to his upcoming trials and criminal offenses that he's being charged with, he has no more control. The courts have control, and the courts are going to do what they want to do and not what Donald Trump wants to do. And this is going to be problematic for Donald Trump. This is where he gets an emotional breakdown or something. And I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. He may get a physical breakdown because he's not looking good. I saw when he walked into Iowa, he's coming in with an overcoat, suit coat on, and no tie. I've never seen him without a tie, but this guy looked bedraggled, to say the least. This is wearing on him, and this week is going to be a busy one, very busy, and the caucus is the least of his problems. So keep an eye on Donald Trump. Keep listening to what he says and look at that ugly orange face. It's going to start dropping and it's going to start looking disheveled because nothing in the near future is going to be good for Donald Trump. Well, yeah, he might win the Iowa caucus, but that doesn't mean anything compared to some of the other shit coming down. So we'll be watching him. We'll be watching him and we'll see how he does. But the fact of the matter is, it's not looking good. We're going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I'll let you know how it goes with the granddaughter. I'm sure it's going to be exciting. We'll talk about the Iowa caucus and we'll find out how that all turned out. I think Donald Trump will win it, but I think we may be surprised by how some of the other voting went. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how the polling proves out once it's all said and done. All right. Hope you have a great day. We will talk to you again tomorrow.